In my opinion, GURPS has the most entertaining combat system ever, but take my opinion with a grain of salt, as I have played only a handful of other RPG systems. This fact alone makes some people believe that GURPS could be used not as a role-playing system, but also as a wargame system. If you're familiar with tabletop wargames, then you know that there are two aspects that are intertwined with each other: scale and level of detail. When each side brings battalions of soldiers and vehicles, then resolving actions second by second on the individual level would take months. Thus, some major system adjustments are required. But if you want skirmish level engagements where each side brings, for example, no more than 10 fighters to the battlefield, then the standard depth of resolution of GURPS can still work just fine. I have seen some people running one-on-one arena fights, something like my combat examples. But a skirmish wargame is something more involved. While the concept might seem simple, there are many things that you have to think about when it comes to running such games. Personally, I have never run anything like that, and many ideas that I'm going to talk about here are not even mine. This is just a collection of thoughts I have read online and some considerations of my own. So let's get through all the steps. The first thing that wargamers usually do is building their fighting force. How would that even work in GURPS? Do you just assign a certain number of points? No, that simply won't work, as GURPS would be incredibly easy to break in such circumstances. It's a role-playing system, not a wargaming system after all. Even if you come up with a long list of generation restrictions, I bet you still won't be satisfied with the result. Balance will be difficult if you are using points. You could try using the combat effectiveness rating, but I don't think it would work well here too. So I suggest abolishing points altogether. Instead, I suggest using a different approach that I have seen brought up by one anonymous poster: card drafting. Imagine you have a deck of cards. Each card has one or more fighters that have been statted up by the GM before the game. Players take turns. Each player draws, for example, 3 random cards from the deck, then picks one of them into his fighting force. This process is repeated again, and the final third card is just chosen randomly, not chosen from 3 random cards. Obviously, there should be a deck for every TL to avoid pitting cavemen against power armor, and on high TLs it might even be reasonable to separate them by LC as well. Or maybe not, I don't know. The main idea is that all combatants are pre-generated and no point buy system is used. Balancing the fighters is more of an art than a science, and if you don't get things right, you can always adjust some numbers. This random card drafting process also ensures that no two games are the same, and that the players cannot tailor their team to be a perfect counter for the matchup. Again, I am not the one who came up with this, but I really like this idea. One other advantage of this system is that since points are out of the question, if you want to include fighters with powers, then you can use different systems. But I would advise to use systems with concrete effects that do not require GM's input. So the majority of vanilla magic and powers is fine, but RPM probably is not. Since such wargames can be played without the GM, the fewer arguments arise between the players, the better. Okay, now each of the players has a fighting force. What's next? You need 2 more things: the battlefield map and the win condition. First, what is the win condition? You could have a simple game where you have to eliminate the other side, but in some cases that might be impossible or take so long that the players will die out of boredom. For example, in a high TL game, one of the players might have a soldier in power armor, and the other player might have a situation where all his fighters that could penetrate the power armor's DR have been killed. Such a game would turn into simply waiting for the power armor guy to kill the rest, and the opponent would be unable to do anything. In a low-tech game, you could have a game end in a stalemate if one side has a flyer, but the other side has no ranged attacks. This is no fun. The same person who came up with the card system also suggested a good win condition, escorting a VIP from one side of the map to another. One player will be given a VIP, probably just a human with 10 in all stats and nothing else, that he would have to deliver safely to one of the 3 predetermined extraction areas on the opposite side of the map. I really like this idea, as it would create a much more interactive and diverse gameplay than just hitting or shooting one another. However, you probably have to limit the degree to which you can interact with the VIP, to avoid the "why don't they ride the eagles to Mordor" situations. There might be other win conditions or game types that would work well. You just have to check the other Skirmish Wargame rule sets for ideas, such as Warhammer 40k, ASL, or D&D Miniature Handbook. Now that we have a win condition, what about the map? I suggest having multiple maps, and the exact map will be determined randomly after the fighting force are assembled. How big a map should be? Since we are playing an escort mission, I think it would be fair to use the VIP's basic move as a measurement unit. I'm going to throw out a random number, 20. Multiply the basic move of 5 by 20, and now you will get a 100 yard by 100 yard arena that the VIP will be able to cross in 20 seconds, but he is very unlikely to move in a straight line, so it will probably take some more time. That seems fine to me, but on higher TLs you might want to increase the size, because high TL weapons are made for long-range engagements. Perhaps giving the VIP a bike or a motorcycle would be a good idea there. The person whose ideas I am stealing had a static layout in mind with 3 extraction zones, one with no cover, one with moderate cover, and one with a labyrinthine layout with lots of cover. That might work too, but I prefer something more organic. How are the forces deployed? You should define deployment zones and have the players roll a quick contest of tactics, if one of the fighters has this skill, to determine who places fighters first and where. Perhaps a stealth roll would allow you to place fighters outside of your deployment zone, but I'm thinking too far ahead. Aside from the deployment and extraction zones, what should a map have? A good map is not an infinite featureless plane, but something that has cover, different types of terrain, and environmental hazards to facilitate tactical gameplay. Also, you probably should include 3 small areas of low mana, a small no mana area, and 1 area of high mana. You know what else could be fun? Item stashes with random content. That way your fighters could find some new weapons, armor, ammunition, or tools. I might be thinking too far ahead again, but there should also be something that negates insubstantiality, because otherwise it could get out of hand. Maybe something like few portable reality stabilization field generators lying around. What's left? Only 2 things. The first one is the actual cards. As an organizer/GM, you have to stat up many different fighters for the players to choose from. That's going to take some time and effort, no doubt about that. The second thing is to organize games. You could, for example, create a Discord server where people could run battles, and I think that most such games do not even require a GM, so you don't even have to be present all the time. Such skirmish games could work in real time using Foundry or some other VTT, or they could work in a slower play-by-post format just as well. You would still need the VTT for the map, however, and all such games probably would take a long time to finish, because even if you're playing in real time, this might take a while, but that's fine in my opinion. Aside from all that, the players will also have to agree on a rule set. As you know, no 2 GURPS games are the same, so it might be a good idea to have a list of optional rules that are used. Since players have different preferences, it might also be a good idea to have multiple such predefined rule sets. The most important thing is for the players to be on the same page regarding the rules, to avoid arguments and confusion. And that's it, I think. I genuinely think that a skirmish wargame using GURPS could work, and I think that this once again proves just how generic and universal GURPS really is. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.